Welcome to the Unshadowed Thought Podcast with James Hall. This is the series I'm going to call Working Past It. And it's dedicated to the people that have reached out to me in good faith to try to get through this injury and a host of other injuries in an effort to live a life that is a little bit more rewarding and is just in a better place. I want to thank the people that have reached out to me and dedicate this set to them. Okay, in this episode, we're going to talk about, or I should say this series, we're going to talk about how to get better. I've gained a lot of understanding over the last year or two. I've covered a lot of things, but it's really been spread out over a lot of different topics and experiences that I've had. But we're going to break all that down and consolidate it into a series of episodes here where hopefully it'll be organized so that you can understand the different kind of topics that are involved in recovering from TMS injury, psychiatric injury, and other chronic illnesses that could be termed central nervous system dysfunction. So some of it will touch into autonomic dysfunction. Some of it will be the rest of the nervous system, the rest of its function, senses, different things. In my mind, what I've seen is that all these things are intertwined and attached and connected. And when doctors take them and separate them, or we take them and separate them, we end up creating a bigger problem down the line when it comes to understanding these symptoms and how they work together, how they play off each other, and what they stem from, more importantly. So this episode I'm calling Prologue because I'm going to cover a lot of material. I've done a tremendous amount of learning, and I've made a tremendous amount of progress, and I'm sitting in a very, very confident spot right now, in not only in my understanding, but in my ideas about what other people can use from my understanding and my lessons to help themselves. I'm very confident that the people that listen to me and apply their own wisdom and understanding based on what I'm communicating can be very successful in a very short period of time in recovering from this nervous system injury, which includes electrical injuries, psychiatric drug injury or chemical injury, along with what I think is also like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, lots of other chronic diseases as well that I think are really the same, different manifestations or different symptom sets of the same underlying problem. And I'll explain the evidence that I have for this and the thoughts I have around this in this series. So in this series, I'm going to talk about the different categories that I'm planning for the future, and then how they're going to play together and work together, and what kind of things, the themes you can expect to see from me as I'm talking, and then how these different categories connect together and work together. You see, when people ask me how to recover from this injury, I give them some really basic advice, right? Like these are the kind of things that you could eat. This is how I think you should approach eating. This is how I think you should approach activity. This is how I think you should approach your understanding and your mindset of these things. And these will definitely yield some results, right? But it's how we connect these things and the overarching understanding of these different topics that affect our ability to heal over the longer term, right? You can change, you can eat really well, right? And you can get really healthy activity, meaning you can rest the right amount, right? And then you can get some healthy, positive activity the right amount, and then rest some more, right? And then get good sleep. You can build a positive mindset around these things, and you can make a lot of progress, right? But ultimately what I'm seeing for myself and for others is that over time, as these things start to benefit you or me, right? There's hiccups that come along, and we lose connections that we had in the past, and we lose understanding that we need. And so those things start to fall apart. So when it comes down to healing long term, getting 110% better, and then going forward without looking back or without having setbacks, it really comes down to our understanding, because we're all going to be in a position where we have to make unique decisions that are like unique to us, unique to our situation, that have a unique set of consequences one way or the other, because no two people are the same, no people have the same lives, right? There's always going to be all these variables, right? So when that happens, and it'll happen from the beginning, but as things get further along, we're in more and more unexplored territory for being a person that has a really serious injury in our past, and then going beyond that, because when we look back, we're always vulnerable mentally to the state we were in before, right? So, for instance, the other day, I was doing fine. I was having a good day, right? And I got into this situation that in the past would have set me back really, really hard. And when I got into that situation, the first sensations that ran through my mind and body were, okay, this bad thing happened again. I'm hitting a setback. I'm going into a setback, right? My body started to tingle everywhere. I started to panic. All the stress ran through me. I was horrified and terrified, and I just could feel myself sinking all the way back into something that's taken me years to get away from, right? And when I had these sensations, I reacted differently than I had in the past. I stopped myself. I took some breaths, and I said, okay, that was then, now it's different. Whether I physiologically endure some of the same sensations and problems that I had in the past, that's one thing, right? Maybe there's things I can't help. But I know mentally, if I stay positive and I stick to what I know and I head in a direction that I want to go mentally, and I refuse to go back and to believe the things that I used to about me being ultra harmed and never being able to come out of it and being permanently injured and all this stuff, right? If I refuse to believe those things and believe these new things that I've built up, I can get through this and I can be better than ever, right? And it's not going to set me back, right? But in that moment, I could physiologically, the senses in my body, I could feel the setback coming. I could feel the panic. I could feel the horrible things in my past overtaking me, right? But I remained calm, and I shifted my mindset, right, as soon as I realized that it was in danger. And then I went to doing the things that I know that keep me calm, that keep me relaxed, and keep me rested and in good shape. And as I did those things, I shifted from going through a setback into just being a small hiccup in the road. And admittedly, this happened to me a few days ago. Looking back, I'm like, that should have devastated me. Even before my TMS injury, I would have reacted in a much more severe way that would have had much longer lasting consequences than it did when I handled it now, right? So this unique thing came up, right, that I had to handle, but I had to have the wisdom and the understanding to be able to pivot and to take it a different direction that I knew would work out well and would benefit me going forward, right? This is a perfect example of why I'm going to talk about these different areas of recovery and explain them and connect them and show the overarching themes and understanding and wisdom as I see it, so that people can see how I'm doing, what I'm doing, and why, right? And they can see the success. And then they can apply that themselves and learn from it, or they can adapt it to their own and make their own winning strategy using hopefully the same knowledge and wisdom, right, that I'm passing on here. So here, that's just an example of why this is important and why you should listen. So that kind of gets us kicked off, right? So I'm going to cover some topics. I'm going to cover food, kind of what you take in with your body. This is an extremely important topic because you eat every single day, right? And some people don't think food is consequential, or some people don't necessarily look at food from the right angle, right? But if you're doing something that repetitively, where you're doing something for all your waking hours, it's going to have a huge impact in your health, how your body works, and how your mind works as well, right? So food has to be covered. Actually, maybe it doesn't have to be covered. I think people could overcome things without it, but to me it's essential. And the topic of food, or maybe we just say what we eat or how we eat, right? It's also going to cover not eating as well, and fasting, and the different kind of methods of eating. So, but it's very important, and I'm gonna kind of give some overviews here, and then I'm gonna cover it in depth in the episode, right? But I want to reiterate things so people progressively understand the importance and the principles that I'm driving home through this stuff. Okay, so the overarching principle is that your nervous system directs all the function in your body, right? Your nervous system is the top tier system. Nothing can operate outside the nervous system, and nothing can subvert it or overcome it, right? Psychiatric drugs try to kind of take over the captain's seat and do different things, but actually what they end up doing is just agitating the nervous system and subsequently dysregulating everything in the body. And that's how, doctors and medicine kind of tell you that it works, right? But really it's just blunting things out or agitating the nervous system through kind of this hacking process, right? Of chemically inducing this state with drugs. So it's not overcoming the nervous system. It's just trying to tweak it, which is a horribly bad idea. But the point is that the nervous system is at the top, right? And it directs all the function. But as it directs all the function, whatever it's doing, whether that's breathing, making your heart beat, thinking, or eating and process your food, it's using bandwidth, right? It's using energy. Everything that moves and breathes and lives spends energy. This is what we know about science and physics and biology, right? So with food, it's really important that we understand that foods that require a lot to digest from the nervous system, that's all energy that takes away from your body healing and performing higher functions, right? So the antithesis to that is eating foods that aren't hard to digest and or not eating foods at all. So limiting the times that we eat food and limiting any food that we eat altogether, right? But again, this is not a one size fits all solution, like a pill, like a magic bullet. Those things don't exist in our existence in creation. So this is a real practical knowledge and explanation of how food and eating fits in, because human beings eat food and they do it every day, right? So we need to understand that principally the nervous system needs rest to recover from this injury. So leveraging how we eat food is a way to give it rest, because remember, we're going to reiterate this over and over again. The nervous system is the top tier system. So nothing in the body gets fixed without the nervous system's help, and nothing gets done without the nervous system's help, whether that's drugs altering it or whether that's you allowing your body to heal itself, no matter how severe that injury is. Because remember, we've seen horrifically severe injuries for people, and for people to make full recoveries, right? We've seen people be fully disabled from a stroke, right? And then they've come back, and doctors are like, they're never going to walk again, they're never going to talk again. And then they've hiked through the Andes and been able to communicate perfectly well and regained all their function, right? Phineas Gage had a pipe shot through his head and through his brain, and he lived a full and normal life after that, right? There's a Russian scientist that was exposed to a full burst of gamma radiation and should have killed him, but he lived a full, complete life after that with full cognition and full health, right? We have a Japanese gentleman that was in both the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bomb conflicts instances, right? So he was there and he got a full blast of radiation from both atomic bombs and went on to live a full and complete life. So what we do know for sure is that no matter how grievous our injury is, we can make a full recovery from it. We can live through it. That's absolutely possible. Now, we also know that people have died and have been horribly mangled for the rest of their life and disabled for their whole lives for much less, right? So there's a whole lot of middle ground in there. So what we're doing is we're figuring out the differences between those people that survived and the people that didn't and got stuck, right? And why. And so the purpose of this series is to take what we know, pull out the good stuff, keep it, apply it, see if it works, check and make sure if it works, share the information with each other, and then once we find stuff that works, go with it and roll with it and make it work for ourselves, right? So we're learning, we're sharing knowledge, we're applying wisdom, and we're figuring things out. We understand it's not a one size fits all. That's not a thing. It's never going to happen for anybody, right? But we are meant to help each other and to figure things out and to share and to grow from there. So that's what we're doing. So we're taking these lessons that history has and other people have, we're learning from them, and then we're applying it in our own lives until it works. And then when it works, we're sharing it and passing it on so that everyone can benefit and to grow together. And the cool thing is about this is that we're not relying, this is not a costly process in terms of money, right? We're not relying on a doctor to just hand us a remedy that we don't understand and then we take it and we don't know if we're going to get hurt or we're going to get better, right? We're taking our own life into our own hands and we're applying an incredibly powerful healing process, right? This healing process that we're going to go through has the potential to take care of almost any issue you're going to meet and deal with in your life, right? Aside from a physical injury of like getting your arm broken in a car accident or something, right? That once it happens, you can't just heal that with your mind, right? All internal chronic illness and injury seems to be related and go through the same process. And this is learning that process and learning how to beat that process so we can heal from it if we're impacted by it, but also then to avoid it altogether and to live a life that is very productive, very healthy, and in my mind, what our ancestors did to survive the austere environment of planet Earth and to thrive in it, to give us where we're at today. So it's a really powerful thing, far more powerful than I could illustrate with any words. But as I learn it, as I'm going through the process, I feel very compelled to share it with everyone because it's just, that's it. I don't want to be paid for it. I don't want acknowledgement for it. I don't want anything for it. I want it to be passed on. I want people to understand it. I want people to apply it and to share it. And I want people to grow from it and it to help everyone and everything around me go into a positive direction. Because these days I see horrible, horrible spells and plagues of negativity, poor acting, poor thinking, poor intention, poor virtue, poor wisdom. Just an incredible amount of stupidity and selfishness surrounds me every day. And I'm perfectly comfortable with that. I have no problem dealing with that. I have been, my whole life. But this is my effort to change that and to give people something that's free, that can be multiplied and shared, and that no one can stop. So if you want to be a part of that, obviously I invited you here, and that's how you got here. So that's what we're doing. Again, overarching theme. These are overarching ideas that you're going to see throughout this series that I want you to think about, and I want you to challenge these thoughts both to yourselves, the people around you, and then to me. And I'm going to kick ideas to you that I'm going to constantly be bringing up throughout this series, and I want you to think about them. You can dismiss them, you can think about them, you can accept them. You can reach out to me and tell me what you think about it, but I'm going to come back to this one theme that I'll start right now, and then I'll move on to the other categories that I'm going to cover in the cast, in the series. But I think all these different topics are dictated, and our health is dictated essentially by virtue, kind of like Stoic virtue. If you think back to knights and chivalry and like all kinds of stuff, right? The people of those times practiced different virtues like honesty, fortitude, like hard work, right? And compassion and these different things. And it's my understanding that these things cultivated a higher state of being for the people that did it and the people around them, right? So essentially, if you think about stress as something that is toxic to the human condition, right? And it cripples our nervous system, which cripples our neuroplasticity, our ability to think, our ability to function. It cripples everything, right? Being honest with everyone around you, being compassionate, being hardworking and having fortitude to the extent of not like the American idea of working hard, like work until you break your back and work until you can't work anymore. That's not fortitude or hard work, right? That's just negligence. We're talking about kind of self-sacrifice kind of fortitude, right? When you do this in your environment, right, it's very freeing, it's liberating. You feel good when you help other people and when you help yourself in the right way, right? And then other people feel good when they receive that. For instance, right, like if I help my neighbor out with something and then say I'm working on my car in the garage and it's just not working out, I can't figure it out, right? My neighbor comes over and he's like, hey, I've done this before, let me help you out with this. They show me how to do it, they help, it's done, right? I may have been stressed before, but it's incredibly rewarding. I feel supported. I feel like I'm on a team. I feel like people got my back. I feel like I can succeed and I can be happy and healthy and I don't have to worry about as much, right? Because it's not just me out there. These are incredibly positive, wonderful things that build plasticity in our brain, right? They build good sensations, good sensory experiences, right? They fulfill the nervous system in a way that's far greater than we can really understand, right? So that's what I'm going to challenge you on as you listen to the stuff and I feed you everything that I've learned. I'm going to challenge you to think about virtue and its place in your life and virtue's place throughout these things that I've used to get better and that others have used to get better, because these things that I'm asking you to consider doing or that you might be considering doing, they're not easy to do. They seem simple, but when you look at doing all of them together in succession and in a kind of a directed effort to get better, it's not easy doing all these things in a given day, understanding them, understanding the themes and the wisdom behind them, and then applying them going forward. Actually, it gets really complicated. I can break it down into simple steps, but when I explain to you why we're taking all these steps, and that if you don't understand them, you're likely to have a setback, right? Then things start to get complicated, because I'm not there when you go to a restaurant you're going to eat, right? I'm not there when you've been working more than you're supposed to and then someone gets sick or something happens that's really critical that you have to do even though you're exhausted, and you have an opportunity for that to generate a setback or for you to maybe choose differently or to work something different out, right? To where maybe you won't have a setback, but you can still help other people or take care of something important, right? There's all these very specific things that happen that I won't be able to help you with, right? But if you have the overarching understanding and you understanding what will happen if you push yourself too far, or where your limits are, or what alternatives are to what you might think might be out there, right, in terms of making a good or a bad decision, right, then not only are you going to be successful for yourself, but then you can pass on that knowledge and that wisdom to people around you. Your kids and your family will see your ability to make those good decisions and the rewards of that, and it all just grows. It grows exponentially, and it's passed around to everybody, because people that get it, they understand how valuable this is. They'll understand that you're giving something of tremendous value for free that they can do for themselves that no one can ever take away from them, right? This is a far greater gift than giving someone $1 million. And if you asked me if I regretted getting injured from TMS and going through 5 years of complete and utter misery and torture, I would say, no, I don't regret it, because I got something far greater than $1 million. Like it's you can't take this away from me, and it's huge. And the reason I'll never regret it is because I gained something of value that's far greater than I can ever put into words, right? You can give someone $20 million, but it's not going to stop them from suffering and making bad decisions and being unhappy with their life, right? So the reward for my suffering and difficulty and breaking through that is that I can enjoy my life. I will have great health for myself, and then I can pass that on to anyone that I want for free. It's a reward far greater than I ever could have imagined. If you go back 4 or 5 years when I was at the height of my misery and wishing I was dead every day, then, and I could tell myself this, it would. I remember thinking back then, small sidebar, I just wish I knew how long this was going to last. If I knew I had to suffer for 20 years like this, I could accept it. But it's the fact that I don't know when I'm going to get better, or if I'll ever get better, or if I'll die in the process, that's making it impossible for me to function and to get past this stuff mentally, But the gift that I got in reciprocation of going through this hardship and learning things for myself is that I've been through something so difficult. On top of all the stuff that I learned, right? I've been through something so difficult that I can persevere through things that are far harder, than I ever imagined. And you see inspirational movies, videos, and books about people that got through incredibly hard things, right? And now that's all put into real perspective for me. It's not just me kind of thinking about how cool that is, right? It's a different kind of thing. So here we are. So I talked a little bit about food. The next category, I think, as I'm thinking of it right now, is going to be activity, which also includes your body, right? And how we're utilizing and leveraging our body and using it every day, right? Which I think also includes sleep. Sleep's a really important topic for everybody because the body and our activity has a certain kind of a flow when we're awake, but then it has a very different flow and importance when we're asleep. And talking through all that stuff is really important that people understand that because it's just a huge facet of what we're going through, and it generates a huge amount of questions. There's an indefinite number of questions. I've been answering questions about this whole thing for 5 years, and I realize that everyone's still asking me slightly different variations of the same questions that all kind of demand different answers. So I'm going to go through that to the best I can. And then from there, we'll talk about the mind, which is also going to include there's a faith component to that. There's an understanding component to that. And there's a mindset component to that, right? There's all these. It's really the biggest thing. Our mind is the absolute biggest factor throughout this whole thing. We can never escape our minds. We're always in our mind. We're always in this kind of presence and sensory perception of our mind, right? Which is kind of inside of our brain. It's I call it the thinking mind, right? But then I'll also submit to you that we also have a spirit that's in there as well. When I was injured, I lost a lot of my cognitive function, and yet I still had this ability to know right from wrong and stuff, even when my cognitive function was almost zero. So at my perspective here is that we have also a spirit, right? There's something else in there besides just our cognition. Our cognition is kind of our physical mind and our brain, right? And then there's a spirit that's interfacing with that's experiencing all the sensations of our body and all of our thoughts, and it's leveraging our brain for different kinds of cognition, right? Like short-term memory, storytelling memory, multitasking, and different things like that, right? We can break that down into a neuropsychological examination and see the different components that our brain uses to interface with our reality in this world. But there's another entity kind of behind that we have that is the human spirit, which has always existed in history. People have always talked about it. It's clearly there in my mind, in my experience, and with all the people that I've talked about, right? So that definitely plays a role, right? Us differentiating the spirit from the mind is important because, as wild as this sounds, your mind can actually be taken away from you. And I know lots of people that have had that, and I had it done to me to a large extent. I lost a lot of my cognition and my mind function or my brain function, right? I couldn't remember things, couldn't recall things, couldn't multitask. But my spirit had a function and an ability to interface and control my brain to my mind and my body, or control my body through my brain, right? And my mind. So it's important to know the difference from that, right? Because we're talking about really extreme states here. So if someone essentially is in a vegetative state or they're going through something with their chronic illness to where they can't control their body, right? And they can't even control their mind to a large extent. You need to understand that your spirit is still there, and that through your spirit you can still make decisions. You can still calm your body. You can still do things to affect what's going on. And the trap and the flip side is that some people don't believe that's true, and they're like, yeah, I'm in psychosis, I'm seeing things and hearing things, and they're kind of flipping out, right? Like they have no control. Well, what I know from myself, my family, and talking to others is that, I mean, if you accept that psychosis for what it is, it's just a bunch of sensory input that's being manipulated that looks real to you, but it's not, right? Your spirit can make a choice to react or to stay calm and not react to those things, right? And induce a state of peace and calm instead of fight or flight or excitement or agitation, right? And once you learn to do that, you become a very, very, very strong person, right? Because essentially all that stress of fight or flight and all that agitation is toxic to your body, and it's going to agitate any other symptoms you have and going to kind of create damage and harm to your body that you're going to have to work your way out of, right? So if you understand these differences, then if you're up for it, you can take responsibility for them, you can own them, and then you can implement changes, and you can affect your mind, your body, and your reality based on those decisions, right? So we're going to have to dive into that stuff, or at least if you're going to go on this journey with me, I'm going to dive into it, and we're going to go from there. So that's the other category. So we kind of have like food, which is a big category, right? And then we got body, which includes activity and sleep, kind of what you do with your physical body during the day and how you spend your time if you want to in a physical form, right? And then your mind, which includes kind of your spirit, your faith. It's kind of a whole kind of category topic. Like it jumps around. You could categorize it in different ways, but I'm going to talk about everything that's relevant that I can think of in there. And then we're going to talk about, again, these overarching themes of how to handle each one of these, what they do, so like the negative and the positive impacts they have on your chronic illness or your condition, right? And their roles in you making progress and getting better, and what that looks like in my experience and what I know from others. And the flip side, like how that can affect you negatively, and how it can put you into a setback, and how it can hold you back, and how it'll affect things, right? Like, because we don't have to assign positive and negatives to all this stuff, although I probably will. There's this kind of esoteric, like psychological way of framing everything, right, that I could try to use, but that kind of lead me into my disclaimer for this series, is that I had kind of a ground rules one for my previous stuff, and that's kind of out the window here. I did that a long time ago. I was in a different state, and now I'm explaining this in a way and to people that I'm actively trying to help. So this isn't a like suitable for all ages and all people kind of thing. This is a series based on getting you better. There's no fluff. There's no BS. This is about effective ways and me transferring my knowledge and wisdom to you so that you can make improvements and get better. This is not me trying to please my audience, not that I did a lot of that in the past, or to act PC or to help people kind of understand it. This comes with a basic principle that you need to work to understand what I'm saying so that you can use this information to get better. This is not a let me figure this out for you and apply this to your individual situation. This is not what that is, right? This is for the people that want to put in the work and have made up their minds that they're going to get better, and they're going to do it as quick as possible and as efficiently as possible, and they're going to come out of this in the best condition possible. I mean, there's all sorts of people in the middle that aren't going to be able to achieve those kind of things because they don't understand what I'm saying. But I am absolutely done with trying to bend over backwards and change all my language and explain things 50,000 different ways to people. I mean, I love doing that. I've been doing that for years, right? But I've come into an impasse with myself where like I'm only interested in working with people and helping people that are trying to understand for themselves what's going on and how to get better, right? They're not trying. I found it self-defeating, right? Like I try to feed people what I think they need to hear or kind of relate to them and try to, apply what I know to what they're experiencing, what they're looking for, right? So hopefully they'll understand how it's related and then come up with a good answer. I found that that's not helpful. It's actually counterproductive because there's these old samurai masters that would say they would kind of give a short explanation of what they were doing and then they say study this thoroughly, or at least Musashi would do that, right? And that's all he would say, right? He's not a lot of long-winded person, right? He would just say study this thoroughly, right? Which means he's transferring the best he can to you what he knows and how he knows it. He cannot explain it to you in a way that's just going to make sense for you, right? You need to learn about what he's saying so that you can apply it, learn it in your own way, and gain what you can from it. But the caveat, the key here is that you have to work to understand it. You have to go through it over and over and over again. Understanding is going to take new meaning on for you every time. It's going to take on new meaning for you every time. And it's not going to be until you can work it to a full understanding of probably some trial and error and different experiences that you're going to gain the wisdom and knowledge from it that will allow you to succeed and to get better and to heal. This stuff was profoundly difficult for me to understand, to learn, and to work through, meaning I had to learn the theory behind it, I had to apply it, I had to fail, I had to learn from my mistakes, I had to relearn the theory behind it, reapply it, fail again, and keep reworking it for a series of 5 years before I got to the root of what the understanding was, right? How to apply it in any situation and come out the better for it, whether that's going through something extremely stressful or dealing with feeling very well, because that's deceptive. If you feel well, you feel like you can do more. That's not a wise decision. If you feel well, you should pace yourself and enjoy feeling well without being like, okay, I feel well for the first time in 5 years. I'm going to go ape and eat a bunch of ice cream and jump off a cliff and go back to work, right? No, horrible idea, right? Once you've barely gotten out of bed, you don't, disrespect the whole situation and disrespect yourself by being like, all right, I'm going to go nuts, right? Yeah, and I'm saying this from experience. I'm saying this because I just told you that I had to fail at this over and over again and rework it and relearn it until I figured out how to do it the right way. So I'm not talking, I'm probably going to sound arrogant. I don't really care because I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for others. But this is not arrogance. This is confidence. There's a difference. I've been through this over and over and over again. All the stuff I'm talking about, not only have I worked through this until I've bled over it, but I wouldn't share it with you if that was the only case. I've also seen it in other people and seen other people work through it over and over and over again to help validate what I'm saying. And then I go through and I make sure I theoretically understand these things as well and how they're working. What I'm not going to do is go into the deep science behind it, right? Because I no longer really... There's no practical application in deep science. When people are like, hey, your mitochondria are doing this and that, and your cells are doing this and that, and here's the chemical reactions that are taking place while you're doing this or that, that's fine. I get it. It was seen in a laboratory. That stuff isn't complicated to me. I understand it very well. It's easy for me to understand. It's just how I've been my whole life with like biology and different things. The chemistry, not so hot on, right? Everyone's got their talents. Mine was understanding biology, right? So I understand what's behind it, but here's the thing. When you go to apply that stuff practically, it doesn't work because each person is different. Each person has a different mindset, body chemistry, genetics, everything is different, right? There's some fundamental things that work for almost everybody, but there's always people that it doesn't work for, and there's always changes, there's always exceptions, right? And this is the problem with Western medicine. So I'm not going to go there because it doesn't apply for everybody and it's not important. The only thing you need to concern yourself with is what works and what doesn't, and what's going well, what's going badly, right? What ideas make sense to you and which ones don't. When you go into a doctor's office and you're like, my hand hurts, and they're like, well, the chloroplasts in your cells are upset about this and that and whatever, so take this medication. That's not helping anybody. No. In fact, it's hurting people. It's probably hurting a large demographic of people that are taking that pill, and they don't understand why they're taking it, right? But if you explain to someone, okay, you're smashed your hand in a machine, your bones are mashed up, you can see and feel your bones in your hand, right? You can see the inflammation and the swelling, we want to take care of that, this is what's going on, this is how it works, right? In terms of what they can see and feel and sense and why, that is a good explanation that works, right? Like getting out into that deep science, one, it doesn't help the patient practically, and they need to know practically because it's their body, they're the one taking the pill, the doctor's not taking the pill. Right? So his understanding doesn't help the situation, right? So if a patient's taking that pill and the swelling's all gone and everything's taken care of, and the doctor said to continue taking it for 2 weeks, but they're healed, right? That patient needs to be able to make a practical decision and discontinue taking the pill because they're all better, right? Or the inflammation's gone, or the symptom they're worried about is gone, or their hand's healed, it's no longer broken, right? In the case that doctors prescribe pain pills way longer than the patient needs it. I was a victim of that. Like, I had a broken limb, and the doctor was kept renewing my pain prescription. And by the time I went in there, he's like, man, you shouldn't have been taking this for the last month. And I'm like, okay, and then I stop it, and I feel horrible. I'm like, okay, I wish that didn't happen. Well, guess what? Who's responsible for that, right? I'd love to say it's all the doctor's fault. It was my fault too. But the point was there wasn't a practical explanation given, right? And thorough understanding didn't take place and transact. So it messed up the whole situation, right? So I'm not going into impractical things. And I think you should consider not going into impractical things with anyone you're considering treatment or help from. If people are constantly going to this, cellular and atomic level and stuff, it doesn't serve any purpose. You can't get there. You're not using, a microscope on your injuries to monitor cellular change or anything, right, when you're healing. So if you can't see it and it's not practical, then it doesn't work. If it helps you get to some sort of understanding that you can functionally use to help yourself, that's a different story, right? But I'm tangenting, but this is kind of the mindset stuff that I'll be going through. Stop going to places that aren't benefiting you, right? You need to be a little bit selfish in the way you think about some things. Other things you need to be selfless all the time, right? This isn't actually a selfish way of thinking, right? This is just a practical and honest way of thinking, right? So you need to think practically and honest about everything. If someone's offering you an explanation that you can't understand, it's just not honest, right? You don't know if they're telling you the truth or not. You can't prove it. So what's the point of the conversation? If it serves some sort of benefit, even for theoretical understanding that you can use, different story, right? But I'm not going there. I don't need to, and you don't need to, so don't worry about it. Wanted to cover that. So to summarize, we're going to cover these different categories. We're going to go through them in depth so you understand each one, so you can make good decisions about each one, even if especially if it falls outside of the scope that I'm talking about, right? I'm going to give you a certain limited amount of information. You need to be able to make decisions for yourself, obviously good decisions inside that information and outside that information, and apply it to anything that you're going to go through. That's how you're going to get better quick. That's how you're going to succeed, right? So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go over these overarching themes again because it's important that you understand them. Your nervous system, which has been agitated and dysregulated through maybe a treatment you had or an extreme trauma event you had mentally, Could be, a head injury from a psychological trauma, right? Those exist, right? It could be from multiple concussions. It could be from like something you got labeled as ADD as a kid, and as you're growing up, you're realizing you don't want that anymore, right? It's all, in all likelihood, that's a dysregulation that you got from something as a child. It could have been from a psychological trauma. It could have been from being exposed to chemicals in your diet or something that agitated your system, and then now you believe that you have this air quotes ADD, right? And you believe you've been agitated your whole life, but breaking those thinking patterns and breaking that psychological kind of state that you built for yourself is something that you want to do now, which you can do, right? You don't have to have those things if you don't want to, right? You can change everything about your body. Trust me. I fasted for like, I think it was 23 days, 26 days, I can't even remember now, right? Everything changes. You can change everything in your body. If you think you've had ADHD for your whole life or you're OCD, fast. You fast for 21 days, I guarantee you're going to feel what life is like without those things. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what you can do. Fasting only kind of sets you up in a space, in a mind space and a physical space that you can attain, when everything's functioning right. And it changes everything when you fast, because we will talk about fasting in the food part, like really seriously. But it changes and refreshes and gives you a break from all your emotions. Imagine all your emotions being put on pause. That's what happens when you fast. All your physiological sensations and stuff go on pause when you fast. Just imagine the constructive action your nervous system can take when it no longer has to digest food or experience emotions or any senses essentially in your body for a while. That's huge, right? We're talking about overcoming chronic illness and injury. We have serious, very, very serious tools to address those things. Guess what? They're not a pill. They're not a surgery. They're not some rubbish that someone's throwing at you. Like put your head in a big steel box and we're going to zap it over and over again until you feel better. There's amazing things that you can do that have nothing to do with those things. And guess what? They're inherently built in you as a human being, right? Something really rad happened when you were born and you were given all these gifts and abilities and things that you have been brainwashed that you probably believe that you don't have, right? But it's not true. Human beings have been existing for a long time doing really incredible things, and guess what? They didn't have medications and electricity and all the different stuff that they're using now to try to correct the human thought and condition, right? So think about that for a moment. So we're gonna venture through these things. I'm gonna challenge you on a lot of different thoughts, but this overarching theme again is that the nervous system is the top tier. It controls everything. The only thing that can heal the nervous system is the nervous system itself. The only way the nervous system is going to heal itself is through rest, right? Think about the nervous system as a vehicle. It's a machine. It's a car, very finely tuned car, right? Imagine driving it and it's an issue. Like you throw a rod, there's a loud bang, and all of a sudden now the car's screaming and it won't handle right, and you're shifting and it's not reacting right, right? Are you going to try to fix that car while you're driving it? Are you going to try to get out in the hood while it's running and pop it open and start poking around while the engine's running? Or are you going to shut that thing off and give it rest and let it cool down and then try to assess the issues and allow it to do what it needs to do and heal itself, right? Or allow you to heal yourself in that way? What are you going to do? You're going to fly an airplane and something goes wrong with it, you're going to try to fix it while it's flying? There's a lot of analogies you can try to start thinking through, and that are analogous to the human condition in the body, and they're gonna make sense, right? You're gonna start to understand how the nervous system works, right? But the core principle is going to be that the nervous system needs rest, and that as you recover, you're going to experience sensations and thoughts and different things. They're going to be uncomfortable with you, maybe because it's unfamiliar, right? That's going to happen. Think about what it's going to take for you to get better. If you're used to being in pain and being miserable all the time, Feeling great is going to be a really weird feeling for you. So you're going to get a lot of weird thoughts and weird sensations. You might want to go wild and run around and do crazy stuff. Maybe that's not a great idea, right? Maybe just stay calm, appreciate what you got, right? And then continue on the path, right? But only you, I'm not predisposing you to some action. Only you can know what's right, right? Sometimes going nuts is a great idea, right? It's usually always a great idea. I love going nuts. I never regret it, even if it hurts after, right? But if I'm learning from it, then that's a win. It doesn't matter if I had a setback. It doesn't matter what it is, right? That's a win if I learned from it. If I just repeated the same mistake over and I didn't learn anything, that's just a lack of virtue, right? It's a lack of the ability to control yourself. It's usually driven by selfishness, right? I'm gonna re-challenge you with these virtue ideas the whole time. So you got to think about it. Do you sacrifice and eat something that you know you shouldn't because you're going to gratify yourself? Are you going to call someone that's been in a stressful relationship and you know they're just going to create a bunch of stress for you instead of maybe not, right? And are you going to, contribute to some bad thinking patterns you had in the past by continuing to engage in that kind of behavior and that thinking process? Or are you going to try to make a new thinking process and stop what you're doing and think about things differently and act differently than you ever have in the past, right? Do you have the courage to do that? Do you have the fortitude to do that, right? The reason why I bring up these virtue things because you're being asked to do things now that you've never done before, right? So you need to understand why you're doing it and how you're going to do it, right? And you have to have the courage to do something different. You've had bad results in the past, right, from doing the same things. So you really think that's going to strictly be your solution, is to keep doing the same things until you feel better? You can. It might happen. It might work out for you in 10 or 15 years. Best of luck to you if that's what you want to do, right? I'd rather my recovery didn't take 5 years and that it took 6 months to a year instead. Or a month or 2 weeks, right? The techniques that I'm giving can be applied to do things really radically, right? I'm talking about what took me 5 years could have been accomplished inside a few months. Do I know for sure? No. It definitely could have been accomplished within a year, right? So that's a 5-fold difference. If I would have known and understood what was going on. If I would have known back then what I know now, I could have avoided it I definitely could have avoided it altogether if I knew before. But even if I waited till after I was injured, if I did the right things up front, I probably could have avoided the whole thing. The impact of the injury probably wouldn't have taken the effect that it did and the hold that it did if I would have known what to do at the time, right? I'll never be able to be certain about that, and that's fine with me. I don't care. But that's my guess, right, if I had to guess. And I've seen people get well really quick using these techniques that kind of confirm my suspicions about it, right? I'm not just like throwing spaghetti noodles against the wall here. So again, this overarching theme of rest. The nervous system heals itself. It's the only thing that can. There's no man-made anything that understands the nervous system, let alone can make a successful intervention into it. It doesn't exist. It's not out there. You can look at all the things your doctors have said and that you've heard about and that you've read about. Go get into the details. Go talk to the people. Go figure it out if that's what you want to do. You'll find out that it doesn't exist, not for the human nervous system. Okay? There's no successful interventions out there for anything. People will claim some success, but if you look at it and you dig into it, it's not what it appears to be. And that's been my experience. And I'm not buying it. So if you are, maybe there's something else out there for you, right? But that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to be self-reliant, to have the best life that I can and that the people around me can, and use what I was given, and not to, again, stick my head into a machine that's going to shock it until I feel better. Turned out to be a bad decision. So, okay, so that's where we're at. That's where we've landed. I've taken up enough of your time for this episode, but this has been the prologue. This is just giving you an idea of what we're going to get into. I'm planning on having I think 4 more episodes in the series that are going to dive specifically into each one, and then I'm going to have another wrap up that's similar to this one that's going to kind of review my thinking over what we've talked about and kind of cover anything that I've forgotten or missed. but then maybe give an ideas for the future and maybe discuss where I'm at and where I'm going and that sort of thing. So thank you for listening. If you have questions, let me know. Stick with it. Do something different every day. Try every day. I know memory is an issue for all of us. Write things down. Do anything you can to stick with what is working on a daily basis. Don't let anyone tell you, including yourself, that you can't do it or you shouldn't write something down or that everything's just going to work out for you magically. No, make an effort. Write things down. Make an audio recording. Leave yourself a voicemail. Have a friend of yours call you and remind you anything that you can do to help yourself out, go into a positive direction every single day with this stuff and this condition. Do it, because that stuff will pay dividends over time. But you have to do the work. You can't rely on anyone else. You have to do it yourself. You're the only one that can understand yourself, and you're the only one that can make change for yourself and get yourself better, because you're gonna have to change your mind and your body to get there. Okay? So hang in there. Do anything and everything you can. Don't exhaust yourself. Stay calm, cool, collected, as low stress as you can. Remember to rest and to pace in between everything that you do. But take it easy. It's been great talking to you. Have a good night.